All right, so I haven't done all the steps like I told you to, but this is still going to work out just fine. So the next thing we'd like to do is bring in our focus points, right? So as you are designing lights, you typically divide up the stage into areas and then create focus points at the center of each of those acting areas. That's how we do a show, right? We're creating washes that light different areas of the stage. For this step, you will want to turn your scenery back on. I don't have any. I'm doing this kind of in a void. And then you want to add your acting areas to a separate layer, typically, so that you can turn them off when you don't need them. So I would create a new layer, and I would start from that scenery layer that you have, which probably has an elevation to it. And then if I right click and I say new and I say acting areas, it'll create an acting areas layer for me. You do want to make sure that all of your acting area layer is at the same height as your scenery layer, right? Everything that's at that upper ground level. I believe we said to do that at the 0 point, so you should be fine. Because I think we went down below to do the rest of the seating. My drawing is a little weird. It's not quite the same as yours, but let's say that's where we're at, okay? So the next thing I'm going to do is add some acting areas, and I'm going to go into the lighting tools, right? And I'm going to find this thing which says focus point tool. Click on that little guy. I'm going to come up to the pencil wrench, and we're going to choose what we want it to look like, right? So there are standard hybrid, there are 5-foot circles, 8-foot circles, right? Let's do an 8-foot circle, okay? And we're gonna put it in, the active class is fine, or you can give it its own class, right? There's already LX grid, LX units. You could create a new class for that to sit in, if that is your jam. But we're gonna turn them off using the layer, so it shouldn't be a problem. And we'll have it show the focus point name. Okay, cool. So now I have on my cursor an 8-foot circle, and I can go like this, and I can say this is name A, the focus height is 5 feet, and it creates that area, that acting area that's an 8-foot diameter circle. As I continue clicking, it's going to keep making them, right? And you can kind of figure out what you need to cover the stage, right? It's probably about 9 areas on the thrust, and then maybe, depending on where your scenery is, maybe 4 areas up above, or 5. That's up to you. You're the designer. I'm gonna just kind of drop in a bunch of acting areas for fun, all right? They're not perfectly spaced. You can adjust them, right? So like maybe actually if B is centered, which is good, maybe A actually comes out here so that we're catching people who are a little bit further off of the stage on that side as they enter. And the same thing can be true over here. You can adjust your acting areas. You can use the align and distribute also to help adjust your acting areas to where you would want them to be, right? So that's that idea. If I do Shift C now, I will see them floating above the stage. In my case, my stage is elevated, and that means that my acting areas are not at the exact right height. So I'm going to come back in and change this whole layer up to an elevation of 18 inches. And that should raise them up so that they're 5 feet above my stage itself. What you may need to take a look at, and you'll see what it looks like right in 3D, is those heights that I gave you, those measured heights that I gave you for those pipes might be based on the theater floor at minus 18 inches. And if that's the case, if your grid pipes are all floating up too high, you'll just want to change the lighting position bottom Z, or the overall height of the lighting position, back down to minus 18 inches, and that'll drop everything so that it makes sense, right? It should look kind of like this, right? So there's a lower grid in the center and higher grid pipes on the sides. It's all pretty close anyway, right, to the stage. So now once I have that, and once I make these pretty, my next step is going to be to add some systems of light, right? And so in order to do that, I need a certain set of lighting instruments. And if you take a look back at this drafting file I gave you, you can come over here and see this is the inventory, right, that is available in this space, right? So that's what we're going to be working off of as you design whatever thing you design for me, right? For the purposes of this assignment, you just need 3 systems, and you can use whatever fixtures you want to accomplish that. We have some 50-degree strands, some 36s, we have some ETC source 4s in various barrels, and then they have some Fresnels and pars, okay? So this is your total count, as in how many of those things you have of each, and also what fixtures you have available. So in order to now put lights into our drawing, we want to go find these fixtures using the libraries and add them to the resource manager for this project, right? It looks like we have some 36s, some 26s, and some 19s in that 75 watt fixture. So let's go back into the resource manager and try and dig those out. Source for search. Okay, and I'm going to switch it into this mode. I just want to find those regular old 750 watt. There we go. So we want 19, 26, and 36 regular source 4s. So I'm going to import those 3 files. We're going to bring them on in here. If you wanted to create a new folder for all of your lighting instruments, you totally could. I'm just going to say okay. What other fixtures are there in that list? Let's go see. An Altman 65 6-inch Fresnel. So I come back in here, and instead of source 4, I say Altman Fresnel. And I'm looking for the 6-inch, this guy. Let's right click and import that guy. Okay, and then we need an Altman Par 64. And I'm just going to get the wide flood version, although you could get whatever version you're going to use, but I'm going to use the Par 64 wide WFL wide flood, and we're going to import that. So I have a symbol for this, I have a symbol for this, and then I need these strand SLs, a 36 and a 50. Great, and so I can come grab the 36 and the 50 and select them both and import them both into my Vectorworks file. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, great. So now, instead of, I can come back up in here, right? And now I can actually see the fixtures that I have, instead of I had some random, this random thing, which you won't have in yours. But now I have the actual fixtures that we have available to us, okay? So I'm going to start with a 36, just for funsies. I'm selecting it again from the choose the lighting device symbol. I can double click on it to select it, or I can hit the select button, and now there is a light on my cursor, right? At this point, I want to switch from this acting areas layer up to the light plot layer, which I'm actually working on. The reason I have the light plot layer all the way at the top is that it will then snap and place fixtures on positions, but it will not disrupt those positions, okay? So I'm going to just set this in for lighting area for like A, B, and C. I'm going to just drop in a light. I'm going to point it at lighting area A, B, and C, right? And now I can come in each of these fixtures. Okay, it's now a whole device, right? Shift C. It's automatically snapped it to hang up on that pipe that was given, right? It's looking for a hanging position and it found one, so it's already sitting on that pipe. You can like zoom in and everything. It's looked around, right around it, just like a real light. And the only thing that's left to do is to focus it. And if I scroll down here, I can find the focus button. Focus, right? So this one that I have is going to focus point C, right? This one right here is going to go to focus point B. This one right here is going to go to focus point A, okay? When I hit Shift C, you'll now see instead of pointing straight down, they are slanty ways, right? The next thing you'll see is if I select them, these little puppies, I can turn on the focus, right? So I can look at the beam angle and see if it looks correct to me, right? So I can have it draw the beam. And it's going to think about its life because I'm recording. So now you can see the lighting beams and how they are overlapping at the focus point. And it says show beam at focus point, right? So that means that it's setting it up to show those beam overlaps at the focus point. You can also have it show them at the fall off point, which is basically the stage, right? So you can see what that beam is going to look like at the stage height instead. These are a pretty low angle. They're kind of scraping across the whole space because they're a 36. It's a pretty decent throw, right? You can also do things like if you're like, gosh, my beams are kind of, oh wow, where'd she go? My beams are kind of massive at this height, right? I'm going to switch it back to the focus point. Even at the focus point, right? That's a lot of beam for that throw distance, right? They're very, very wide relative to the position. So maybe I want to replace the lighting device, right? And at that point, it's going to open up this little menu and you can't see it, but I'm going to switch them from 36s to 26s. And you can immediately see the focus, the beam size scale back down to what it would be if it was a 26-degree fixture instead of 36, right? For D through F, there's not a midpoint hanging position over the audience in this space. So you might want to use 36s hanging from this pipe, right? For G through H, you could probably go, you know, from in here, right? Or from one of these pipes in order to match your angle relatively, okay? So that's the basic idea. In the case of these side light systems, which you'll also be doing, so you'll be doing a front light system and then you'll be doing side light systems. In the case of your side light systems, you might only need 2 fixtures to cover the whole stage. You might have a separate set of focus points for that, or you might just focus to A and B, because if you focus a light to C, you're basically focusing a light on your audience. So that's how I would approach setting up my lighting fixtures. So that'll be your next step in this process, is getting your lighting devices, setting them up, putting them in space. So go ahead and get that part done. Again, I need 3 systems. If you want to go crazy, you absolutely can finish this out as a whole lighting design, up to you. But for the purposes of the assignment, I need 1 light from each of 3 directions that hits these acting areas. And that could be, you know, 3, could be like a front light system and 2 side light systems, whatever makes sense to you, okay? It could be diagonal front light and backlight. I don't know the future. You be the designer. But let me know if you have any questions as you work through designing a rep plot for this space. Thanks, friends. I will talk to you in the next video.